So ProPublica just sent photographers to Minneapolis to document the federal immigration crackdown. And what they captured looks like footage from a war zone.
It's never going to feel the same to walk these streets. I'm Peter DeCampo.
My name is Cengiz Yar.
We're photographers with ProPublica. Been documenting the chaos.
It reminded me quite a bit of wars I've covered abroad in places like Syria and Iraq. Not something I've experienced before in American streets.
Except it's not a war zone, technically. And it's happening in an American city in 2026. And we're paying for it. And real quick, I'm Lauren Peritura. Please take a moment to subscribe. We're gonna get into it. We also currently still have a lead on Katie Miller, who is married to Stephen Little Bitch Miller. She's married to him on purpose. If you're new here, Stephen Miller is the pale white nationalist from Santa Monica behind all of this ICE terror. And she's building a podcast on the backs of kidnapped children and immigrants. So every sub, every hype, every comment, every share is an FU to Katie and Stephen Little Bitch Miller. Cengiz Yar packed his reporting bag for Minneapolis. Medical kit, full face respirator, helmet, couple of tourniquets. He also brought layers of warm clothing because temperatures were expected to drop below 20 degrees. In his own words, Yar said he wasn't fully prepared for what he'd end up seeing in the streets. He covered conflicts around the world, and what he witnessed in Minneapolis reminded him of those moments. And on his first day of reporting, Yar came up on an incident that had been unfolding for an hour or over an hour. 3 construction workers were clinging to a roof.
9:30 a.m., 2 construction workers were met by federal agents while working on a roof,
bracing themselves against the slanted plywood of an unfinished 2-story house. It was -4 degrees out.
One worker caving after nearly 2 hours.
Federal agents had massed in the house and cars on the streets, and they were conducting a raid on a construction site. The agents called for the workers to come down. They refused. They stayed on the roof in only high visibility vests and work clothing, and Yar stood outside looking up at the men, wondering how they were surviving. Onlookers begged the agents to let them bring the men blankets. They were told to stay out of the building. Other construction workers cursed at the officers. One worker told the men to come down before they freeze to death. "You can at least go to a warm cell," he shouted. One young white worker stuck his middle finger in the face of agents idling in their car. "Fuck you," he screamed as he stomped around on site. These 3 men remained on the roof as the young construction worker argued angrily with the agents for almost an hour. Finally, as the time approached 5 p.m., the agents left. Onlookers rushed into the building and brought the men down to wrap them in blankets. "You're okay now," they said. "You did great." 3 men chose to freeze on a roof in -4 degree weather rather than come down and face these federal agents for over an hour until the agents finally gave up and left. On Friday, Yar arrived in South Minneapolis as protesters gathered. They were shouting, filming, and blowing whistles as armed agents were arriving in a pickup. After a few minutes, the agents threw tear gas into a small crowd of onlookers and sped away.
I witnessed a heavy standoff between armed agents and 200 to 300 protesters. I was gassed. Many of the people around me were gassed.
You can gas us, you can kill us, we will never back down.
It was an overwhelming scene.
Gas drifted through the snowy streets, passing cute 2-story houses. Yar's throat was burning. He crouched to the ground behind a snowbank and was coughing up irritants. He couldn't have known that less than a day later, in a similar situation, Customs and Border Protection agents would kill a man by shooting him multiple times in the back as they pinned him to the ground.
It was a really heartbreaking scene, watching people break down. Some brought flowers, others laid candles. I watched as 2 women cried and held each other.
This is now part of the history of this city.
Alex Preddy died while filming agents and while trying to help a woman as he was pepper sprayed. In the unfolding chaos in the hours after the shooting, Yar watched as agents unloaded tear gas on a couple hundred furious protesters who had assembled at the site of the killing. Heavily armed law enforcement faced off against a crowd of completely unarmed protesters carrying signs and screaming for justice and retribution. Peter DeCampo learned that somebody had been shot outside Glam Doll Donuts on Nicollet Ave at 9:07 a.m. Saturday morning. It would be hours before he heard the name Alex Preddy and watched the videos of CPB agents shooting him to death. But knowing Minneapolis was on the edge following the death of the execution of Renee Nicole Good, also killed by federal agents, also on camera, he grabbed his camera and the warmest clothing he could find. And then by 9:29 a.m., DeCampo was in his car, texting a group of fellow photographers, OMW, on my way. Yellow police tape and federal agents lined the scene of the execution, keeping everyone about a block away in every direction. A small crowd gathered, and the first person DeCampo recognized wasn't a journalist, it was his neighbor. Peter, she cried. She wasn't sure what was happening, just that she had also heard about the shooting and wanted to get down there. She sobbed in his arms for a minute. Then they parted ways. More agents gathered. Many wore gas masks. More residents and others ready to protest another killing.
A young man stood at the edge of the yellow tape and yelled. An older woman hugged him to try to calm him down. The anger of the crowd was understandably palpable. ICE agents, get out of Minneapolis, they screamed. DeCampo wrote, I do not have the words to articulate how it feels to watch this unfold in Minneapolis, a city that I've grown to know and love after moving here a few years ago. The journalists who flocked here over the past few weeks are people I have run into while on assignment in hotspots all over the world. Now they were here in my home city. As crowds grew, agents fired tear gas to keep them back. Crowds would briefly disperse, but then some agents would grab and detain people regardless. The crowds reformed quickly. The cycle of tear gas, detentions, and regrouping continued. After about one bout of tear gas, DeCampo stumbled away, doubled over, coughing, and he heard somebody yell, "Come inside." He looked up and saw a woman opening the door to an apartment building. She was yelling to the two photographers. He stumbled towards them. DeCampo was grateful to be out of the tear gas and to also be warm. That day's temperature was well below zero. At one point, he looked down and realized frozen condensation had iced his camera dials and buttons into place. The photographers made their way onto a rooftop and spent the next hour photographing from above. They overlooked the scene of the execution and could see the FBI examining it in the line of protesters and agents going back and forth in 3 different directions. They watched as the federal presence finished at the shooting scene and packed up. They slowly backed out, firing tear gas at protesters who ran at them as they drove away. The photographers went back down the street. Protesters gathered at the next block, and a similar scene continued to play out. At this time, it was with city and state police. "Why aren't you protecting us?" one person yelled at them. Another protester tried to calm the crowd down, but people were fed up. "Fuck your pacifism," somebody yelled. Tear gas was fired. People dispersed again. Police slowly backed out. Eventually, without federal agents and police around them, the mood shifted from chaos to something more somber. As DeCampo took a moment to breathe, he realized that the final standoff had taken place right in front of Cheapo Records, where he went record shopping on his birthday a couple years back. The events of the entire day, the shooting, the protest, the tear gassing, all unfolded on a stretch of Nicollet Ave called Eat Street, known for having many of the best restaurants in town, with cuisines from all over the world that showcased the city's beautiful diversity. DeCampo wrote, "I knew that then that walking those streets would never feel the same." People made their way to the site of Alex Preddy's death. There was still yellow tape around it, now tied haphazardly around trash cans. A small blood stain was visible on the pavement, and quietly they began to build a memorial. Yar described the scenes he witnessed over the next few days in Minneapolis as full of heavily armed federal units rolling through quiet neighborhoods. In a grocery store parking lot, angry residents screaming at agents, demanding they leave their city, masked and armed government agents pointing weapons towards him, and some protesters during an encounter in the middle of the afternoon were getting weapons pointed at them. Curious guests in hotel elevators wondered why he was carrying around a medical pack and a gas mask. Local residents thanked him for being there to witness the situation. A drunk man at a hotel bar cursed at him, saying that the media was at fault. Emotions are high. Then Yar wrote this: "The wars we've carried out as a nation abroad have come home. Federal agents in gas masks firing tear gas on American streets at American citizens, construction workers choosing to freeze on roofs rather than face detention, neighbors sobbing into each other's arms, protesters being grabbed and detained after crowds disperse from tear gas, and a blood stain on the pavement where an ICU nurse was executed by the state. And a memorial built quietly in the snow on each street. ProPublica photographers documented it all in real time. The images tell the story that official statements don't mention. What they documented looks like war zones. We had to take a break filming this because this was so heavy. And this is all happening again in American City in 2026. So if you think this shit needs to end, let's really give it to the people who are creating content that is counter to this narrative. And that starts with making sure we're in this together, have more subs than Katie Miller. So sub, share, like, comment, and we'll be back with more.